the Democrats' flag bearer, Kamala Harris, the outcome of that could define the trajectory of international relations, economic policies, security situations worldwide, and of course, the prospect of the new world order, and much more, defining the USA's stance. Most importantly, the 2024 elections will again serve as a litmus test for American democracy, which has faced a backlash in recent years or times, and its role on the global stage. For the African continent, the results could impact critical partnerships and approaches to cooperation in trade, security, and the global fight against climate change, among others. So in a nutshell, the next president of the White House will have to shape America's domestic policies, its position on global affairs, having the propensity, of course, to build or mar the channels of international relations. So you're going to stay tuned as we dissect the high stakes of the November 5th, 2024 elections in the United States of America, a race that is really tight between the Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Kamala Harris. And we are also asking this very question: if the USA is ready for a female president. It is Global Insight on For You Media. The 5th of November 2024, the data set aside officially as electorate cast the ballots to choose the next president that will occupy the White House in the next 4 years. And of course, we have underlined that the election does not only mean something for Americans, but of course it has a holistic view, as the outcome will have a direct implication on global affairs and international relations, security, situation, trade relations, and you can name the rest. And it is on this note, ladies and gentlemen, that we've unveiled today's edition of Global Insight, taking a particular focus on the U.S. 2024 presidential elections. Should it be Donald Trump, or what will be the expectations at the global stage, or Kamala Harris? What will be the expectations from electorate and even the global world, especially on the foreign policy stance that the country will take after the proclamation of the result? And of course, is there any hope for an independent or third party candidates to actually make way to the White House? Those are some of the areas that we're going to touch, among others, as we continue to analyze the stakes of the U.S. elections as voters started or ongoing across the territory in the United States of America. And of course, with a panel of experts and pundits, we're gonna have further or maybe greater insight on what they think about what the 2024 elections present, first of all, to the Americans, secondly, to the security situations, particularly in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and elsewhere, and how this, of course, will define the U.S. standing across Africa and elsewhere in the world. Without much ado, I'll take you straight away to India. We're going to welcome PURNIMA, who is president of BRICS International Forum, joining us this day to brainstorm on the stakes of the U.S. 2024 elections. Welcome to Global Insight this day, PURNIMA.
Good evening from India. Clarice, it is very good to appear on your channel, and your channel is day by day promoting international issue, and it is good luck that we are meeting again and again on very different international issues, and today panelists are very important, and I hope we will have very good discussion today on American voting. because today millions of Americans are taking part in the democracy's most powerful act.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is voting of American democratic process. This right is not just a civic duty, it is fundamental expression of the people's voice, shaping the nation's future and in many ways influencing the global landscape, because many countries, many international groups are waiting for the result of American elections. So do you want me to continue, or this is just introductory round?
Just the
we will connect
introductory.
again.
I will come back to you. Time for us to acknowledge the other gentlemen who are part of the panel this day, Purnima. And we are going to Algeria to acknowledge Professor LAEED ZAGHLAMI, Algiers University Faculty of Information and Communication, who has actually been very keen on the development leading up to the November 5th, which is today, official data for the presidential elections in the United States of America, a country that holds great significance across the global world.
Thank you, Clarence. Thank you for having me once again on the show. I am almost familiar with your in your program, so my regards to you, and of course to Purnima and HARLEY SCHLANGER. What I want to say just right now, I think the whole world is holding its breath to the result of what will be the election in USA, for the only reason because USA is one of the influential power in the world. So, and particularly they impact the outcome of the outcome of the election will have one way or the other an impact on what's happening in Gaza and in Middle East, in the war between Russia and Ukraine, as well as with North Korea, and with more importantly with the fate of NATO and exactly for the security of Europe.
Absolutely.
Besides the domestic affairs within the USA itself.
Indeed. Indeed, and that is why it has just answered the question why it is something of global interest as the USA voter. It's political leaders to Germany, Berlin to be precise. We're welcoming HARLEY SCHLANGER, International Spokesperson Schiller Institute, just to highlight that is actually of US descent. Welcome to the program this day, HARLEY.
Well, thanks so much for the invitation and my greetings to the other panelists. I've just returned from a little more than 2 weeks in the United States where I had a chance to observe the election process up close. And I have to say that as important as this election is, I was quite disappointed with the overall discussion. And the reason I was disappointed is that we're at a moment in history which is a transition from a neo-colonial world dominated by the United States as a unipolar order, a transition to a multipolar order. You would think this would be a discussion for the presidential campaign, given the emergence of the BRICS, given the two major wars, the threat of another war with China, and yet the discussion was almost entirely focused on personality. So I think the American people are going to have to step up because the change is going to take place regardless of who's president. And the question of what Kamala Harris would do, what Donald Trump would do, we have to guess right now because it's not clear whether Harris would be different from Biden and whether Trump would be different from Trump from 4 years ago.
Sure.
So it's a very important topic, and I'm very happy to be joining you today.
And thank you for giving it importance as you have highlighted and the other guest. It is very imperative to take a keen attention to the election process or electoral process because it is happening at a time of great changes, especially along the lines of international cooperation, moving from the era of colonization, defeating new colonization, and seeing how we can integrate the multipolar world without ensuring that the world is more chaotic. I will start off with you still, Harley. It's true you've actually highlighted some of the stakes or the high points that would define the elections or the election results of the 2024 in the United States of America. Holistically, and of course with our topic that focuses on the fact that electorates are going to the ballots to decide the political fate of the fate of the United States of America, which directly will influence the political landscape of the global world. What holistic perspective can we table to this approach?
Well, that's an interesting question because, in a sense, we're dealing with the unknown. And by that, I mean Kamala Harris is virtually unknown internationally. She did serve as the vice president. She wasn't very visible as the vice president. And so I think around the world, people are looking at the United States and wondering if she's elected, what will they get? Is it going to be Biden 2.0? Is it going to be something different? And this is one of the questions that we have to look at. Now, the second thing is with Donald Trump, he's a very hard person to figure out. I watched him very closely his first 4 years in office. There were some things that I liked. I liked the fact that he was insisting on infrastructure investment, that he was insisting on full funding of education and certain other things. On the other hand, his view of the world tends to be shaped by great power politics, which often is the case in the United States. One thing I'd like to say right up the front is that one of the most disappointing things to me is the almost absence of discussion about U.S. policy towards Africa. We had a lot of discussion about the Middle East. Most of it was support for Israel, which I think is a problem for the United States. Again, I mentioned earlier, almost no discussion at all of the BRICS. And here's the irony. You had the BRICS conference in Kazan, Russia, taking place during the major period of the campaign. And the only mention of it was Donald Trump saying that any country that de-dollarizes will be on his bad side.
Sure.
So there's a lot that we don't know about what they'll do. What we do know is that the American population is extremely polarized. And it's polarized around identity politics. That is the so-called gender and women's issues, the woke question, climate change, the role of government. There's no consensus in the population, and as a result, you have almost a 50-50 split. And what will be interesting to me is to watch how accurate the polls are in predicting the vote, because the polls are showing an extremely tight race, possibly determined by less than 1% in about 5 or 6 so-called battleground states. So we'll see whether the American people have been paying close attention or not. I think they've been paying close attention to some of the attacks. In the last few days, President Trump had a rally at Madison Square Garden, and one of the speakers before him referred to Puerto Rico as an island of floating garbage. And for 3 days, the news was dominated by various discussions of garbage.
Yeah.
So, and for an important election, one wonders why the candidates allowed that to happen, why the media allowed it to happen, and what the rest of the world might think watching President Trump, former President Trump, driving a garbage truck as part of a campaign strategy. So it's been a very bizarre election, and I'm hoping we can get some clarity from our discussion here today.
Absolutely, hoping to get deeper insight as you've underlined, Harley. It seems to be a very tight race, as some pundits have said that it is difficult to determine at this stage who will emerge victorious after the close of the electoral process. And in the same perspective, you've taken a keener look on the developments from the start of the campaigns, dear PURNIMA, to to this day that electorate are already casting their ballot. So in your own holistic approach, what do you think we can make from these elections in the U.S. country that has a major standing across the global world? Hello, Purnima.
Okay, I was speaking, sorry, it was mute. I said that today democratic process face official test worldwide. And it is, very critical election and whole world is waiting the desired result. And I hope in few hours we all will be clear who is winning in American elections. But many nations like BRICS countries, as our friend Mr. HARLEY mentioned about BRICS countries, because recently in Kazan, BRICS countries gathered and it was very strong message to the Western world and United Nations that BRICS economies are rising and they are united. And as a result, we understand that the United Nations chief presence in Kazan at summit was also a sign that BRICS is becoming international power. International agencies and world agencies are observing it and participating in it. So it is a very big election which will determine that in coming time, upcoming government will consider BRICS as an emerging power or not. So this is very important. Like previous days, we listened Bluestein, who is handling the election as a election commissioner. And he said that American elections are very safe, very clear, and we are managing the security and no chances of any grabbing or any mismanagement. So we believe it that American Election Commission will take care of the fair elections. And we are waiting for the fair result. So in this regard, I would say that as a part of BRICS vision, we advocate the inclusivity, innovation, and international cooperation. This result of today's election will help define us the US engages with the world or not. This is a very important question for upcoming government and winning party. Through cooperation among BRICS countries, we strive to promote a sustainable, just and balanced global order. One that respects every nation's voice and strengthens shared responsibilities. So this is my observation, and I am feeling that these elections are fair and people will get clear right to give their vote and to get fair result in American democratic process.
Indeed, it's a democratic process, even though as the democracy of the United States hangs on the balance, and people are seeing this election to be another litmus tester to see to what level the U.S. stands as a model of democracy, especially in contemporary society. And coming to you, Professor LAEED, from the African perspective, and we underlined each continent, each nation is focused on the outcome, determining how this will determine, I beg your pardon, its relations with the United States of America. Let's look at the African approach in line with the outcome of these presidential elections in the United States of America. What can we denote will be the new phase or the new preamble of U.S.-Africa ties after the election results of this day?
Insofar, since the Biden administration took over in 2020, its relation with Africa has been completely neglected. Of course, they have tried so many times to revive what they call through the program of Prosper Africa, but in practical terms, those programs didn't take ground because there was a lot of condition, and there were also exclusion of countries of country that are not complying with what the USA called Western values. Therefore, it was very selective project to help Africa. And on the other hand, the West countries overall were complaining or criticizing Africa for resuming contacts with China, with Russia, with Turkey, and so forth. So I think I would say Africa is tired is tired and exhausted and disappointed by what the Americans have promised, but on the ground they have done nothing. That's why I think now, as the colleague Purnima said, the BRICS is an alternative to hegemonic and to I would say aggressive G7 and Western Bloc, and the emergence of what we call now the global South and against the West, or the West and the rest of the world. I think Africa now realize that they should set aligned with other part of the world, with Russia, with of course with I would say Brazil and China, because those countries overall they get into business, but without any condition. Yes. And that's what the African wants. They don't want any interference or some kind of neo-colonialism, listen, from Western. I think we have to accept it, like it or not. Now, Western values, the Western system we inherit from the Second World War II has come to the end of its validity. And the meeting or the summit in Kazan last 2 weeks in the in the Russian Federation is a result, is a clear answer to Western and particularly to USA, even though of course Donald Trump is not accepting that. But we like it or not, the world is changing, and geopolitics map is getting another direction with the emergence of new multipolar system, and that's exactly, we like it or not. Now I think if I would not say by chance, but if the election, although the election is now neck to neck between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, but if in the case of that Donald Trump will win, he will accept the fait accompli that the world has changed, and he has to deal with in practical terms, and he has to accept that things have completely changed, and USA and the Western have lost their, I would say, their world influence.
Okay. And thank you. And we are going to continue to go deeper to understanding the present stakes in this world. Coming back to you, Harley, while looking at the U.S. standing on the global world stage and how these elections are going to actually bring about some changes, let's also focus on the domestic issues here. You actually have a mastery of the terrain in the United States of America, and today the elections is also defining the future of the electorate, so Americans who are actually voting, and even those who may not be part of the voting process. So how do you, in your own perspective, how do you think the domestic issues in the United States have affected or are going to affect the outcome of the 2024 presidential elections? So do you also agree that it is because of these, grave domestic issues which have made the race to be a really tight one between the Democrats and the Republicans in this 2024 electoral calendar in the states?
Well, let me begin just with a comment to what both of the other guests said about the question of the BRICS and why this is so important.
Okay, sir.
President Putin said that whether anyone likes it or not, these changes are happening and they're unstoppable. And we saw that in Kazan. We saw the motion toward a mutually beneficial cooperation outside of the control of a so-called rules-based order. And this is something that Americans don't understand. The idea of a rules-based order, the rules are the ones made up by the corporate cartels and the bankers for their benefit, not for the benefit of sovereign nations. And so the United States as a whole doesn't seem to accept the idea that countries like India and Brazil and Angola and some of the new members, Ethiopia, that they have a right as sovereign nations to make their own decisions outside of the control of the International Monetary Fund and the global banks. So that change is taking place. Now, in America, you have this view that the United States is the sole superpower and can do whatever it wants. And that's part of the reason why there's so little discussion about foreign policy. You know, I would say that one of the great tragedies is that the American people don't support the treatment by Israel of the Palestinians, and yet they're not raising voices against it. The American people don't want their tax dollars going to a war in Ukraine, a NATO war against Russia, but very few people are speaking out. There's no anti-war movement, so to speak.
Sure.
So if someone sitting in any country in Africa is thinking that Kamala Harris might change this, I want to tell you she's not going to change it. She's not outside of the system. She's part of the system of the corporate cartels that control U.S. policy. The same ones who put Biden in, the same ones who put Trump in, who put, you know, there is a control factor of the billionaires and the wealthy. Now that's why they don't mind the discussion going on in the United States about transgenderism or drug legalization or things of that sort, because that policy isn't going to change the world. The U.S. elite, the establishment, intends to control the world as a colonial power, pretending they're not a colonial power, but nevertheless backing the old colonies. And you look at the changes, as you know, look at Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, throwing the French out. This, to me, is a great development. But try and find someone in the United States who can talk about that intelligently. And so the domestic policies take the centerpiece because most people don't think they can do anything about the foreign policy, about the wars. And so I think that's one of the great fallacies about American democracy. The policies are dictated by the wealthiest people in the United States. And I just heard a figure that somewhere over $3 to $4 billion was spent on the advertising for the presidential campaign. Harris, for example, raised $1 billion in the first 3 weeks she was a candidate. So when you have that kind of money, you know, the average person who gives $10 or $20 to a candidate has no say. And I think that this is one of the great fallacies about American democracy. We actually have an oligarchy running the country, and their concern is with foreign policy. And they don't care so much what happens inside the United States because we have infrastructure crumbling, we have education in bad shape, and that's what people argue about, but they don't touch the foreign policy. And the future is going to be with the BRICS and with the Global South.
Indeed.
And either America can join it and cooperate with it, or America will be left out. And that's the message that I'm giving to my students, to the people I work with, that we'd better get focused on these international issues, or we're going to lose. And I don't mean we should be a unipolar order. I mean, we should be one nation among many, as opposed to the sole superpower, which is the view of the United States since the collapse of the Soviet Union.
All right, thank you for that. And I think we are going to continue in the same light with the policies which you have underlined. Harley, coming to you, Purnima, in your introductory statement, you highlighted the effect or the impact of these elections on global policies. So now, would you be particular on those areas where you want to maybe see results as far as the U.S. is concerned, particularly defining its stance on, in global policies that will suit the present status quo of the global world, especially in line with international relations and cooperation. Hello, Purnima.
This is very high time to observe this election and get the result, because America is important country and one of the power of the world. So now all countries, I think more than 190 countries, are waiting for the result, because international alliances are changing and many countries understand that America is not superpower. Now new president who is upcoming need to understand that they have to cooperate with the world at equal level, which is the agenda and baseline of BRICS economies. So this importance is that how America in upcoming days will behave, new party and new president will behave with the international community. What will be their stand with international communities and changing alliances? Because this is true, as our other colleagues also, Mr. Harley and Mr. LAEED, they mentioned that BRICS summit in Kazan gives a strong message that Global South and BRICS is ready. They can resolve their own issues together. So this Africa also standing very strongly, and African democracies are rising. They know their importance, their resources, and they know the importance of their voting rights. So now world is at different stage. And America is at different stage. They are having very high competition. And as we can see between Kamala Harris and Mr. Trump, they fight till the last 15 minutes. Okay. And when they were not having any media and international agencies competition, they started to speak that which candidate is speaking more and with more energy. So people were observing that who is having more energy and who should be the next president. So this competition was going on like a Asian time. So we are in digital age, news spread everywhere, people know who is going to win, and observers knows that what system is going on. So things are clear, but result is result, it is in ballot box. So we are waiting, and we are waiting for the upcoming president to stand with international community, and international community is ready to cooperate with America for coexistence and against neo-colonialism. So this is my observation and my words, and I feel that we need to discuss new emerging global issues. So many new things rise in the global south which need to be addressed by America. So I hope upcoming government will address in the holistic way and for the better future of all human beings on earth. Not only for American citizen, they will take care, because this American citizen voting is important for international communities, international people, all human beings on this earth. So American people are important today because they are giving future to all global problem, solution of the global issues. And I am feeling positive, and I hope upcoming government will give clear stand for the holistic development approach of the new world order.
Indeed, about the holistic development approach of a new world order and how we can tackle new emerging developments in the new world order. Let's come back to what you said earlier on, Professor LAEED, about the U.S. position on the African continent. And I would love us to be particular with the East African nation of Kenya, where, when people were anticipating who can become victorious, and of course, those saying that if Trump should emerge victorious, it will mean that Kenya will lose its position of being a permanent non-member, permanent member of the NATO alliance, and of course. let's look at, you quite mentioned that the Biden administration did not actually give importance to its relationship with the African continent. And we're looking at some of the examples where the U.S. came in, how it affected Kenya's foreign policy and the effect that the country is facing at this particular moment, and how it actually has a spiral effect on other nations across the continent. How can we navigate all of these with the new leader to position Africa to be more, decisive rather than being dictated what to do, particularly on international affairs?
Well, frankly speaking, this is the special relation of USA with some countries, African countries, like, as you mentioned, Kenya and Liberia. Kenya, for instance, because of President Barack Obama, he got his origin from Kenya. That's why there are so many African American there, and they try one way or the other to redirect the relation between USA and Africa. But I would say, of course, it will be very hard for Kenyan people, for Kenya country, to get through or to get close to Donald Trump, for the only reason Donald Trump has in his foreign policy some, I would say, paradoxical attitude and controversial policies. And I think he does not bother too much about the rest of the world. What matters for him is business. And he said in so many occasions that he is able, he pledged that he will finish the war in the Middle East with Gaza and Israel, as well as with between Ukraine and Russia, besides asking to withdraw or to stop financing NATO. So I don't think Trump will care too much about the future of Africa, and that's why maybe with the Biden administration there was some kind of cosmetic policy to help and cooperation through, as I said, so many summits between Africa and USA, and as I mentioned already, this Africa Prosper program. But again, here USA policy to Africa is based on very selective criteria, and exactly whether you are supporting Western values and particularly USA interests. That's why the USA have been kicked out of some countries in West Africa, and of course I am talking about Mali and other countries in western part of Africa. But what I want to say, I think this is time for the African continent to realize that there is no you cannot get anything for granted from USA if you do nothing yourself. I think the lesson to learn, the morality of this, is that Africans should rely on themselves, countries should rely on themselves, and do not expect once again this assistance just being the support of USA. This time should go. And I think with Donald Trump, we will not continue this way, because what Biden has done, what Biden administration has done to Africa, they are just buying their position. I would say, yes, buying their political position against some aid, whether humanitarian, whether food, whether this or that. But concretely, I cannot see any U.S. enterprise investing Africa, nothing. But there was an outcry when China, as I said, and Russia and Turkey and other countries are coming to invest in Africa. So let's make it clear, this is double standard. We will not continue anymore, and particularly for I would say East African country like Kenya, they should realize they cannot set up, they cannot get this special status anymore, because of for sure with I would say, the support of Barack Obama, who for sure has asked has asked Joe Biden to get this status. I think time has gone. We should stop any kind of support in your back, this new colonialism and special. By the way, Kenyan status of being special member of NATO did get a lot of criticism from African Union, and that's why I think now time has come. African Union has to emerge as one strong union to speak in the names of 55 countries. That's what we expect. Instead of going one side to the other and supporting one against the other, this is what the African now should realize. There is we cannot get anything for nothing. So it's better to have this series of summit between different countries. But please, basically, all these are based on partnership, cooperation, and mutual interest.
Indeed, and I will stay with you, Professor LAEED. You quite mentioned Barack Obama, and we are going to look at the U.S. policy that promotes war. Let's look at an example of, according to Pundit, when the U.S. has been in the Middle East, the U.S. has been in Afghanistan, and particularly, and now in the North African nation of Libya in 2011. Till data from 2011 till date, Libya has not been able to also head to the polls to exercise this democratic right since the fall of its former president Muammar Gaddafi. Now, being conversant that the U.S. has this mantra of U.S. first, which will make the country to do whatever it takes, even if it has to go to war to ensure that it protects its interest and its people, they are going to do that. So now you quite mentioned the role of the African Union. How can the leaders of the continent be more decisive in this era of shifting alliances, as was mentioned earlier on by you and the other guests, to capitalize on multilateralism, to defend or have a stronger voice that can influence major stakes at the international arena?
Thank you so much, Clarice, for the question. Time has come for African Union to get stronger leadership. And we are about 2 or 3 months before the election of new leadership in February 2025.
Yeah.
I think the whole continent should learn from our weakness, from our vulnerability, from our of course, negative attitude. And that's why time has come. We should get strong. We should help each other and unite each other behind our African Union leadership. Of course, with the support of the regional economic community. That is most important. Time has come. Everyone in Africa, and especially the leader of the African countries should ask themselves why 55 countries, and we are not able to impose, we are not able to influence the world. Why we don't get a fair treatment in the world? Why we are always despised, marginalized, belittled? Why always we are used as scapegoat only just for donation and for this mentality should end up one way or the other. I think, and that's why, of course, we are not going into fighting, but we are asking for equal treatment based on partnership, on cooperation, on mutual interest. That's what we should, the African countries, the African leaders should speak now. They should treat with all countries. And the opportunity now, as I said, already, and of course, as your guests have already mentioned it, now Africa, through BRICS and other forums, it's an alternative. It's a huge opportunity for them to set up, to contribute to the erection of a new international world order, new world order based on respect of course, of the independence of, don't interfere with the internal affairs of countries. So this is an opportunity for the African to get stronger and, of course, to look for the future. And of course, I think now they have the framework to do so. And we have now African Free Trade Continental Free Trade Association. We have the Agenda 2063. We have the movement for the person. We have the unique passport. So there are so many projects to be implemented for the sake of having a strong African Union, which can really be a partner in the world affairs and, of course, contribute to peace and security worldwide.
Indeed. Very imperative, and looking at in line with the situation in the Middle East with you, HARLEY SCHLANGER, we want to look at the position of Kamala Harris, who actually outrightly said that if elected the next president of the United States of America, she will end the war in the Middle East, in the Gaza Strip in Lebanon. And we are looking at the stance of Trump. So in your own perspective, given this, very visible differences in the approach masterminded by the two main candidates in the elections, that is Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, what do you think can maybe the leadership of the Democrats, Kamala Harris, do to reshape U.S. standing in the Middle East issue, particularly as the Israel onslaught continues to continue ongoing, and we see the effect on millions or thousands of Palestinians and others around the globe.
Let me go back to something the professor just brought up, and you also, the Libya question.
Sure.
Because people don't understand what Barack Obama was really about. Obama coordinated with the British and the French the destruction of Libya. The coup in Ukraine was run by Biden and the Obama administration, Victoria Nuland and others. The Democrats have become a party of neoconservatives and war hawks, just like the Republicans. And so when people say, what will Harris do differently in the Middle East? She's not going to do anything differently. Her advisors are the same people. And she has not spoken out about cutting out the weapon shipments to Israel. Now, this is an important issue because this is where you see the fight between the BRICS and a new world order coming into existence and the old sole superpower imperial system of the US, the UK, and NATO. What is the fight about? Why is there a war in Ukraine right now? You go back to Zbigniew Brzezinski and the geopoliticians in the United States who believe that the South has no role in the world. Kissinger once said, nothing important has ever happened in the global South. So you have this arrogant establishment in the United States which doesn't want a new world order. So they use Ukraine as a hammer against Russia. They're using Taiwan as a threat to China. And if you look at Israel, Israel is used as a hammer against the Arab world and against the potential for Europe to have relations with the Arab countries. And where does Harris stand on this? Well, she is with Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State. Blinken said he keeps going to the Middle East to try and get humanitarian aid for the Palestinians. Is it really the case that the United States cannot provide aid to the Palestinians who are being slaughtered mercilessly by the Israeli forces? Is the United States that impotent that it can't do anything? Meanwhile, Blinken and Harris say we want to help the Palestinians, and yet we keep sending these 2,000-pound bombs to Netanyahu and his killers. So this is what the problem is with the United States. I don't see any significant change with Harris unless there's an outcry from the American people And this is where the question of Africa is so important. What's the issue with Africa? Who controls the raw materials? Do African people have a right as sovereign people of sovereign nations to determine where their wealth goes? And by wealth, I don't just mean raw materials, I mean their young people, their population. Will African nations be given an opportunity to develop? That's why the Russia, China, India, especially the BRICS are so important, because they're in Africa now. They're helping to build infrastructure. The West only built infrastructure in Africa to extract raw materials. If the Russians and Chinese continue with the high-speed rail, with the dams, the power projects, the water projects, then the African nations have a way to take the wealth that exists and use it for their own people. That's the issue. Now, one more thing on the Middle East situation. If you look at a map, you'll see something interesting. Look at the countries that surround Israel and Gaza. You have Egypt, now a member of the BRICS. Ethiopia, now a member of the BRICS. Iran, a member of the BRICS. Saudi Arabia, perhaps a member of the BRICS. These are countries that have, and the United Arab Emirates, these are countries that are affected by the Israeli genocide against the Palestinians. And so I see these wars as a deployment by the Anglo-American elite establishment and NATO to destroy the potential for a new world order. That's why this U.S. election is so tragic. It was a lost opportunity to have a discussion. Do the American people wish to be part of a mutually beneficial world system, or do they continue to insist that the United States has the right to control raw materials, credit, and investment? And that's the issue that should have been brought up. And that's what my organization is in a fight about. We're trying to get the American people to wake up and realize we're being used to crush the hopes of the people of Africa, the people of South Asia, the people of Latin America. And that's the nature of an imperial system. And that system has to end.
Indeed, putting an end to the unipolar system. And from what Harley just highlighted, Purnima, we can already see that there is already tactical resistance to the emerging world order, which is the new world of multipolarity, and which makes it somehow very difficult to, like you underlined earlier on, that there is need for the U.S. to come to the terms of the changes happening and, move along in this new world that is bringing together different countries, redefining the stakes of international relations and corporations, and seeing how we can inculcate emerging changes, especially coming from the global south, and why not the particularly from the African continent and elsewhere. And now let's look at the fact that, you quite mentioned while talking earlier on the fact that there is need for a more stable economic landscape. But then when we look at the plight by BRICS nations and other countries across the globe to try to ensure that the dollar doesn't stand as the lone international reserve currency, we saw what Donald Trump said, and which others feel like he is weaponizing the dollar. So how can we navigate this whole complex situation where the resistance to a new multipolar world has created a whole lot of chaos across the global world, and what tactical issues can we align, and if we can, is it possible that the world can bring the new leader of the White House into understanding or accepting, because the reality is being understood by the political class of the United States. And of course, how can we bring them into accepting the realities of the changing world of shifting alliances and international cooperation towards a more stable and world of multipolarity that will ensure equal development at every level. I quite remember that it was the foreign minister of India that highlighted this during the last Kazan summit, BRICS summit, ensuring that the world comes together and share equal level of development. How can we call the new administration of the United States to align with this new perspective?
Clarice, your question is very important, and if I will be able to answer your question, I will solve the whole world situation. Okay, but I will try to say my views, my observation. See, in democratic process, we make certain system during last 75 years, and all nations are following this system and they are player of this system. So Kamala Harris or Trump or any nation who is conducting democratic election, they are having system and they are working inside the systematic tube. And when they come in democratic process, they win, and they come in the administration, they have to follow certain rules of their nation, their democratic alliances. Okay, now whatever will happen tomorrow, new government or new party will come in the White House, and White House president need to reform American rules. This is first challenge for American president and upcoming government. If they will be able and succeed to reform, then America will give good, confidential, coexisting environment to whole world. Otherwise, in the Eastern world, in African world, people are rising, parties are rising, democratic system is rising, and they are doing their work. They know they are having natural resources, they know they are having educated people, they know they are having good geographical conditions, and how they can alliance with each other and how they can raise their economies. So America need to reform first after tomorrow election results. So if they want very comfortable and new environment for all players in the multipolar world, they need to reform and they need to come up with new strategies with world players and stakeholders. So this is my observation, and how administration and new party will work, it is, very big question, and how their alliances will work and how American corporate will work with selecting president. This is very big question, because everybody's need is different. Okay, in this world, NATO is having their need, weapon industry is having their need, agriculture industry is having their need, we need peace, we need cooperation. So all people together, how to combine is really a challenge. And we created different environment, materialistic environment in last 75 years, and currency exchanges and dollar hegemony, this all things need to change. And we need patience, we need cooperation, and we need new environment to work together and to save each other, to give respect to each other. So this is my observation, and I hope American administration and American new president will understand the voice of new global stage and new global players, and they will coexist with peaceful and prosperity mindset for the human-centric development, not only for American development, not only for their alliances development, but all human beings. This is the responsibility of American democracy and American president. So I hope he will fulfill his duties towards world, towards his country, and towards his party. I think this is my concrete observation and my words. Okay. I wish success to American democracy.
Indeed, which is quite commendable to note that the voice of the new dynamics is all actually resounding across the global stage, calling for these reforms. And what is the probability of U.S. ensuring, reforming its roles or policies, especially foreign policies that will align with this? And that is the question that I will be directing to you, Professor LAEED. still in line with Africa's position. We're talking about the U.S. reforming its, American roles, like the words of PURNIMA and ARNAND. The aspect of foreign aid has always entangled the African continent, and we know that Africa, even though we're talking about the African continent, a free trade area, which you highlighted earlier on, it is still very difficult to ensure this giant economic milestone because of the fact that Africa cannot make a decisive decision on a global economic aspect. So with the U.S. Having this position in the global economy, what strategies, or maybe what is the scope for the new U.S. administration towards bringing about great reforms that will make the scope larger to inculcate these countries of the world that may take very decisive economic decisions that will have direct impact on the economic trajectory of countries, particularly of the global south?
Right, Clarice. First of all, Western countries, Western powers, and particularly USA and those who have the veto power within the United Nations security system, have to come to the conclusion that the world is changing, especially because the rest of the world are fed up with the injustice, with the double standard treatment. What is happening now only in Gaza, it illustrates the example of sarcasticity and decency of some countries. I'm talking about USA, I'm talking about UK, I'm talking about France. They are heavily supporting Israel in its genocidal attacks, and nobody is caring. What system are we living in? What values are we defending? So I think now what happened is a good example for African to realize that no way, not rest anymore. We have to get our own future in our own hands. And what is required by those who will be the one who will be president in USA, he will accept the fact that USA is no more the dominant power in the world. That we should accept that. Now we have the emergence of new power. China, Russia, India, and so forth. They should accept that the global world has changed. What we have inherited from the Second World War II is over, and now the world is embarked on a new process of multipolarity, and of course a new dynamism, as you mentioned it. And of course, if they won't accept that, there will be more clash and more confrontation. But they should accept that the hegemonic values of the West are no more accepted, and we should now treat countries on equal basis and the mutual respect. Having said that, what is now required from the African, they should change their mindset of always being underestimated, of always being underrepresented, of always being ill-treated and mistreated. They, instead of asking for X or Y for help, they should roll up their sleeves and start working and imposing their power on the and of course asking for I would say not asking but fighting for their self-sufficiency, whether in food, whether in economy, whether in any different things. So Africa now has a lot to gain, and we should remove from their own mind this idea, this culture of assistance, what is happening now. They're always begging their hands to this NGO and so forth. Now we should move on, because USA and Western have done a lot of harm to the world, and what is happening now, whether of course in Gaza or in the war between Ukraine and Russia, it's inhumane, it's nonsensical. That's a fact. And the result of the outcome of tonight or tomorrow election, whether for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, one of them should admit that the idea of neo-colonialism culture is no more successful, and they should now think of that there are equitable partner in the whole world, and we should review and reform their manner of dealing with the whole world. No more hegemony, no more supremacy, no more dominance, and that's why it's high time that and from Africa, time to wake up and start building our own African Union system, our own recovering and recovering our values. And I mean, you know, the continent is rich of mineral, of so many of raw material, of diamond, of oil, of petrol, of uranium. But we are poor of culture because we have, and of course, one way it's the Western countries should stop supporting the bureaucratic, corrupted leader in Africa. They are supporting corrupted leader in Africa because of course, it fits their interests. So this is what we should do for the future, and whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, we should face the reality that things have changed.
Okay. Thank you so much. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that you are on 247 Media Africa and the program Global Insight, informative and discursive, of course, knowledge sharing, where we get to bring about diverse opinions into the issues affecting the global world to be able to attain a conclusion that brings about possible solutions to the chaos that the world is facing, and how the new world order can be navigated peacefully by mitigating the level of, be it ideological, diplomatic flair across the globe. So we just to remind that we are live on YouTube. You can leave your comments of what you think will be the outcome of the November 5th presidential elections in the United States of America, and what new impetus can the new leadership bring in line with U.S. internal and foreign policies, and you can name the rest. And in the same aspect of looking at how, power dynamics can change with you, Harley, let's look at, you quite mentioned earlier on, and I would love to have your own opinion on the fact that there is already some sort of strategic resistance to the multipolar world. And you quite mentioned that the Schiller Institute is keen on educating, especially millions of Americans, to understanding the realities on the ground. Now, should Harris emerge victorious, and when pundits feel like if Kamala Harris is victorious, she will actually continue with the policies of the Biden administration. And I want us to particularize on the position of the U.S. and the crisis in the Middle East and also in Eastern Europe. And people are already talking about the prospects for a third world war should Harris continue, if she is elected, with the policies of the Biden administration. Can we say that the world can enter into another chaotic moment of such a magnitude? And of course, how can we navigate the resistance that we're already facing from, supposed traditional powers in the world at large?
Well, let me start by saying that the ideals presented by Purnima and also Professor LAEED are the ideals that are shared by the Schiller Institute. The idea of a multipolar world, the idea of sovereign nations having rights. And this, of course, goes back to the non-aligned movement. And this is one of the great developments that was suppressed. Take the country of India, the assassination of political leaders, the attempt to pit India against China, India against Pakistan. This is geopolitics. This is the British policy, which has now been taken over by the Americans. This is Halford Mackinder, the 1900 geopolitical doctrine that led to 2 world wars. And so it's not surprising that we're facing a potential 3rd world war. Now, on Harris, look, I would hope that there's a potential for a change. She has an advisor, Philip Gordon, who's written a book which is critical of the idea of regime change. But so far, we've seen nothing from her to indicate that. In fact, look what the U.S. policy is on Palestine. The U.S. repeatedly vetoes UN Security Council resolutions that would condemn Israel.
Sure.
So the question then is, how do you change the situation in the United States? Because if it's not changed, whether it's Trump or Harris, both of them have talked about supporting wars. Now, Trump says he would end the Ukraine war. Well, that would be good. But he wants to go after Iran and China and North Korea. So those are other geopolitical wars. And then you look at Harris. She's done nothing to differentiate herself from Biden. And for those people who think Biden is somewhat of a peaceful candidate, look, Biden was for the Iraq War in 2003. He was for bombing Yugoslavia in the 1990s. He supported every single war. And Harris has somewhat the same policy. So the question, and I think this is where the other 2 guests have been absolutely right, how do we change the American people? How do we get the American people to remember that the United States was created in a war against colonialism? We fought against the British Empire. That's how the United States was created. And the British never forgave us, and they kept trying to retake the United States. And we see now with the Anglo-American consensus of this imperial system that the Americans have become part of the empire, one of the enforcement arms. But the American people don't really want that. We don't want our tax dollars. One thing that's clear now is we don't want our young men and women fighting these wars. So what do? The old British system. You get the other people in other countries to fight the wars. That's not acceptable. So what we do under the leadership of Helga Zeppler-Rouge, who's the founder of the Schiller Institute, is talk to people in the United States about this, the better part of the American tradition, the anti-colonial tradition. Why shouldn't other nations have that right also? And, you know, what I find when just having been back in the United States for a few weeks, the American people were hungry for a real political discussion, for an alternative. But instead, what they got was slanders and the Russiagate story that Putin's trying to come in and take over the United States or take over Europe. And so what we have to do, and I would encourage the other 2 guests to join us in this, is talk to the American people. Forget the leadership, forget the establishment. They're committed to an imperial system. That's where their money comes from. The ideals that we're discussing among the 4 of us today, those are the ideals we have to re-inspire in the American people. And I think it can be done, but it's got to come from outside of the existing political system, which is dominated by money and corruption.
Thank you so much, dear Harley, for that. And while you mentioned we want to look at the system and how the Trump administration has been, or maybe former President Donald Trump has warned to have a very stern stance towards China should he become victorious, or maybe become the next resident of the White House. With you, Purnima, how will a stern relationship between the U.S. and China affect the standing of the BRICS, particularly economy? As we noted lately, we've been talking about the BRICS, growing quite fast, having a GDP that surpasses that of the group of 7 and other renowned organizations across the world. But then we're looking at the U.S. under Trump warning to take a stern, to engage in more of an economic war with China. So how will this affect the standing of the BRICS at the economic perspective? And what's the way forward? So what's the way forward?
This is a very important issue because now we are in
please.
two times. World is moving
can't hear you,
ahead
dear Purnima.
in two times. One is war side,
unmute
and
you.
one side we are doing coalition in economic cooperation between
Hello,
BRICS
dear
countries
Purnima.
and
Okay.
other new Eastern alliances. So, and recently maybe you know about India and China, because always we are on borders at adverse vision. Now with the support of Russia during St. Petersburg Security Council meeting, Russia mediated and India and China signed the MOU that they will reduce their military forces and weapons from the border. And this will support our welfare side, our peaceful operations for the economic development. And this economic development will rise our GDP, Indian GDP as well as China GDP. So this is very important agreement of the BRICS countries, especially China and India. And this is a result of BRICS countries' cooperation. Secondly, BRICS countries are economically supporting each other. Recently, China gave $50 billion to Africa for economic cooperation to develop new infrastructure for trade and economic alliances. So this is also very important force to develop the African economy and African cooperation in trade. Because today, if we compare what America is giving to Africa and United Nations responsibility was to develop Africa by giving them food, by giving them medicine, by giving them education. But if you will see and compare social resources and military resources, you will find that America is giving more weapons than the social resources. So that means you can understand the intention of America and China. China is giving $50 billion for the economic cooperation and job opportunities and infrastructure development, and America is giving weapon to Africa. So you can understand where we are going and where Africa should stand. So Africa naturally will stand with BRICS countries. Africa is a group of more than 27 countries. So it is a new rise in economic cooperation. So, and ultimately understand our all colleagues knows this new South cooperation and Eastern cooperation and BRICS rise. Yeah. So I don't want to repeat and say more words on it. In short, I would like to say that once again, America needs to reform and make new policies for foreign collaboration. They need new think tanks, because I know many think tanks of America and their policies are same. They have to tell India, tomorrow new president will come, one peace think tank will go to meet president and one defense think tank will go to meet president. What report they will give? What we need president from you? We need think tank, defense think tank will tell president we need more weapons on Ukraine, we need more weapons on Israel. And peace think tank will say that for our economic rise, we need peace. You stop war. So what president of America will do immediately? He has to satisfy both think tanks because these are American think tanks. So he cannot crash one think tank and raise one think tank. He has to make the balance in their democratic situation, in their democratic values. But it is not workable now. Now they need new think tank who can understand the value of human resource on this earth. And we have to flow according to the flow of river, not against the current of river. So if we will flow against the current, then we will lose our energy, and it happens with America, because since many years, America was flowing against the real time situation. Okay. And BRICS countries was rising and they floated in their own way for each and every cooperation. They started to take new steps. So this is the difference, and this difference need to be understood by new think tanks of America to support America, to support American democracy, and to support American international relations. This is my observation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing a vital viewpoint. And let me come back to you, Harley. I just noted that we have a comment from Mohammed Bari, who highlighted the fact that he actually cast his ballot, but noted that politicians were able to see whom he actually voted for, which according to him is actually, discrediting already the electoral body in charge of ensuring free, fair, and transparent electoral process in the United States of America. If we already have instances like this case that we have, how can we now rate the legitimacy of the elections of one of the world's most, dominant nations across the globe?
You're asking that to me?
Sure, Harley.
Well, here's the problem. There's hypocrisy when the United States talks about democracy. Democracy for people like Tony Blinken and for people like Pompeo, Bolton, the U.S. foreign policy establishment. Democracy means you do what we tell you. That's the imperial system. And that's the problem. In the United States, do we have democracy? We have censorship going on. We have people, the United States tried to keep Julian Assange in prison. And what was Assange's crime? He reported on criminal behavior by the U.S. government. We talk about the rights of nations and of people, and yet we support the murderous policy of Israel. Now, the problem is in the United States, most people think they have the illusion that we're a democracy. You can do what you want. You can go to sporting events. You can watch pornography on television. There are all kinds of things that people think are democracy and freedom. But when it comes to international relations, we're a hypocrisy, a hypocritical nation. And the United States is losing its credibility internationally because of that. I think one of the great strengths of the BRICS is that the nations can say, we're going to defend our interests, our sovereignty, not against you. What Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, said yesterday in an interview with TV BRICS, he said, we're not organizing the BRICS against anybody. Absolutely. We would like the West to cooperate and join with us. And that's the message that has to be presented to the American people. De-dollarization doesn't mean anti-Americanism. It means opposition to the weaponization of the dollar, to the sanctions, to the regime change policy. And I think if we can get that message across, and I'm very hopeful from this discussion here to see that this is the view of the African countries. For African countries to say we want to be free and independent and work for our own interests, that's not a threat to the United States, or it shouldn't be. But it's a threat to the existing unipolar order.
Well, okay, yeah.
And so we have to get people to understand there's a difference between the actual interests of the United States, which is that these countries are allowed to develop, that we participate and help their development as opposed to stand in their way. And if we can get that message across to Americans, whether it's Trump or Harris, then we have a possibility of change from the United States. But as things stand now, and I'm just trying to make it clear that I don't see a change coming with Harris. With Trump, you may have an end to the Ukraine war, but I think there are other wars coming.
Absolutely.
So it's going to require a change from the American people.
Indeed, change from within can transcend to change without that will touch every level or aspect of the world. And talking about this change, just 2 minutes with you, Professor LAEED, as we are almost rounding off. We are looking at this change. You quite said that it is imperative for Africans to stop begging, but rather be too decisive in asking for whatever position they deserve, especially at the international arena, as the world already functions as one entity. So the question here is, should in the aspect of maybe creating more alliances and bringing practical reforms on the multilateral institutions. We're talking about the United Nations Security Council, where we see the U.S. Using veto power to, downgrade the decisions taken by the Council pertaining Israel's position in the Middle East. How can Africa rather not ask for this representation, but rather define or redefine a foreign policy that is very, drastic, to position itself and maybe take that its sovereignty in every aspect?
Yes, you are right. Africa has the whole potential to be, of course, solid and I would say a credible partner in the world affairs, and especially as you mentioned, and as Harley Chandler spoke about USA. USA is not run by ordinary people. We have the military and industrial complex which is running. That's all we know that. And how to defeat this is just not. We cannot get in war. We cannot get in war with them because we don't have the possibility. All what we have to do is to get not dependent to them anymore, and to work on your own destiny, on your own potential, and to work out your own potential. Take the, as just Clarice mentioned about lobbying from the what we call the group G10 African countries with the leading of Algeria. We are Algeria and a group of 10 countries are lobbying within the United Nations system, United Nations Security Council, to ask for 2 permanent seats with the veto. Not only USA said, okay, we agree, you can give full member, but not with veto. Now we want full member of the United Nations Security Council, but also with accompanied with the support of the veto. So I think what we need, 55 countries in Africa, they have the whole potential, economic, financial, natural, and so forth. They can, if they manage to get one voice, and that's what Algeria is claiming. They want, and Algeria now, as you may know, is member non-permanent within the United Nations system, security system. They are defending the interest of the Arab world as well, the African, and they want to change, to impose a change within this system which has come to the end. I think we have I'm confident if we work together, and more than that, Africa can do itself, by their own countries, by their own members. But also we have a window of opportunity with the emergence and the alternative of BRICS. BRICS, as you mentioned, of course, is not against G7 or G8 or G10, but it's for an alternative, for equitable relation, for balanced cooperation. And I am confident if the African, of course, African countries seize this opportunity that has been given last 2 weeks in Kazan in the Federal of Russia, I think we can make the move. And of course, by making a move towards multipolarity, I am sure Western countries will not survive anymore, and they will come to join, not just imposing their power and their supremacy. So I would say now is question of how to set a new mind, of a new spirit of independence, of partnership, of cooperation between countries, and rejecting all forms of violence, all form of terrorism, all form of criminalization and colonialism. African country has had enough of dominance for the last 200 years, and now most of them are already dependent, except what is happening in Western Sahara, which still is the last colony in Africa, and paradoxically, USA and Donald Trump has supported the colonization, the occupation by Morocco of Western Sahara. So can you imagine that the Western countries are always promoting the strategy of divide to reign? Time has come to stop this, and I am confident that what happened, as I said, the lesson we had from the BRICS initiative should be heard and should be put into practice for the survival, not for survival, for the renaissance of Africa. And I am confident that my continent will be really getting a say in the world affair through all the programs I mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you so much. Indeed, it's time for Africa, it's time for Global South, it's time for the new dynamics to take course. And we're going to end with you, dear Purnima, what a message of course, as we continue to watch the development across the United States of America, waiting to see the results and what part it will define for the next 4 years with the new head of the White House. Purnima, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Next 4 years for upcoming party will be very critical because America have to pass through many new challenges, and I think new president will not sit on easy chair. It is a chair of thrones instead of flowers, because world is divided into many alliances, and to satisfy all alliances and especially defense sector of America, it is very big question for new president. And I feel that BRICS is also giving very big challenge to American president, because every day new country is adding in BRICS group. And BRICS New Development Bank is also standing, its economic and its reserves are increasing. So this is also another challenge in front of World Bank. Okay. And World Bank is having policy to take the GDP percentage for their operations, but BRICS Bank is having different policy. So their new countries no need to give some regular funds to BRICS New Development Bank. So this is one very big difference, because previously American government utilized good funds of United Nations, WHO and World Trade organizations to make their fair face in Africa and Asia.
All right.
So now challenge, now United Nations and World Trade Organization have to react fairly with 30 countries of BRICS. Now they cannot take decision according to America. They have to take decision according to new BRICS group also. Okay. So, I appreciate that United Nations General Secretary visited to Kazan and he met with President Putin. That means they are taking it positively. And in future, BRICS International Forum is also going to United Nations to give recognition as a BRICS organization, BRICS group organization, because in current world, all international organizations are recognized by United Nations without caste, creed, and nations pressures. So I hope BRICS International Forum will also get international recognition, and we need to cooperate and make new environment for East and West with new flagship of BRICS economies and new economic model for the world. And I hope new president of America will cooperate in this process. Okay. For the betterment of the world, America.
Indeed, it is for the betterment of the global world, bringing new perspectives and seeing how we can navigate new alliances peacefully to define equal developmental trajectory for the countries across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we're going to put an end to today's edition of the program Global Insight, but we continue to watch the development across the political sphere in the United States of America, and subsequently in our subsequent programs are going to bring updates and of course what this election mean for the people of the United States of America and what it means for the global world at large, given U.S.'s standing in world affairs. Thank you so much. Do have a lovely moment in the company of programs on For You Media, and see you soon next.